Hey, how you doing? This is actually going to be a part two on my topic on Ebola. Now, as I mentioned in my video on Ebola, I talked about the politics about it and how it pertains to black people. And after I did the video, I started thinking further about the subject. I asked myself, well, what is the origin of Ebola? So I just skimming through a handful of videos on Ebola, and I discovered that Ebola uh, was, the disease or the virus was discovered in 1976, and it was um, discovered in these two countries in Africa, in Zaire and Sudan. Now those two countries border each other, and it was named after a river that's in Zaire. Okay, so it's the medical community named it after a country that's more associated with blacks, and Sudan has a strong Arab, affiliation. So it's interesting how they, when you label something uh, that's associated with a particular ethnic or racial group, then that you would label it as such. Okay, so I think that's the first political thing, the labeling of a disease. Okay, and so at present, where they have the virus, where they have the outbreak of Ebola. Now, the term outbreak actually is a term that they use in epidemiology. That's like the study of, the spreading of diseases, something like that. And I forget what the term means, but either way, there are several countries that have the outbreak of Ebola. Okay. The first one that they mention here is Congo, then Uganda, Liberia. It's also in southern Sudan, as they mention it. They were very specific. When they say Sudan, they say southern Sudan, not just Sudan. Okay. And Sierra Leone, Guinea, Gabon, Ivory Coast, and South Africa. It also mentions that there was like a lab accident, a clinical lab in Europe, and you had people being affected there. And those two countries are England and Russia. So I just think it's very telling regarding this disease. The labeling of the disease, and how they define what nations have it. They're very specific to say that it's southern Sudan, but you have other countries, like let's say with Nigeria, it's northern Nigeria that they had it. But yet they don't say that. They just say the whole country. And as I mentioned in my first video on Ebola, that the U.S., this school in Texas, declined the application of Nigerian students who wanted to go to enroll in their school, So, wow. So that's something that, here, here it's in Texas, and they're going to poo-poo this guy from Nigeria. Um, it's just very telling, okay? And I also started noticing with the countries, okay, the countries, the African countries, about half of them were British colonies, and the other half were like, let's see, well, Gabon is French. Yeah, Gabon and Ivory Coast are French, former French colonies. But Sudan, okay. Oh, well, yeah, the British were there also. So mostly it's British, and then the least number is French colony. So I just find that telling. So here you have AIDS in the U.S., and it's a former British colony, and look who suffers the most of AIDS. I know this video is about Ebola, but I'm just, attaching, here you have a disease, and the people who's going to be affected the most. So here in Africa, with Ebola, it's overwhelmingly British colony. Okay, so I'm just saying that the similarities of these diseases and who gets hurt the most, And it also mentioned in one of these websites that I looked on regarding Ebola's origins, I noticed that, what was I going to say now? Yeah, they mentioned that the scientists were examining these monkey primates, and I wonder how they jumped from in 1976 and its classification, nomenclature of the disease, and how did they associate it with primates? So some outbreak happened. So why? Was this the first thing that the scientists looked into? Primates? So it just, it's really odd how they're going to find these, what led them to that, And I also find telling that the labs, okay, another English-speaking country, England, and then you have Russia. And in 1976, Russia was part of the, the Soviet Union, okay? So I start to wonder, what is the common denominator with all this, And you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking biological warfare, okay? In a nutshell. You have these nations, former British colonies in Africa, primarily, but these nations are very mineral rich, okay? And I'm wondering whether or not these countries were targeted. All this happened in 1970. The disease was initially discovered in 1976, and that was the same time around when the U.S. government had made a contract with a private lab to create a virus of some type that will harm the person's immune system. And so with Ebola, it's definitely arresting their immune system, because you start getting a fever and everything. So I'm wondering, was this also done in a lab? And how did England and Russia, how did they get these samples? They mentioned over the internet that there are 5 different strands of the Ebola virus, and um, so I'm just wondering what's going on. What is going on out there? I'm just looking at the countries. I mean, and if it was first diagnosed in Sudan and Zaire, how come countries directly surrounding those countries um, not getting it? So how does it just jump again conveniently to West Africa, where African African Americans or blacks from the African diaspora in the Americas, that they have it. So I'm wondering whether this is a continuation uh, destruction of black people, even abroad in the Americas. I mean, even in Africa now. But, here with Ebola now in the U.S., and, a nurse that has it, or you had a black nurse, and then you had an Asian nurse, So it's being brought here. And it's just very telling, what's going on. So, let me know if you get ideas regarding, what your thoughts are regarding the Ebola virus and these nations. Why now these nations are having these diseases? And again, these countries, it didn't originate there, and it's between Zaire and Sudan. Yet all these other nations have it, So Africans are being infected with diseases that didn't exist to them, and I wonder what is the cause. Africa's one video was suggesting that maybe it's the food that the people were eating, and they mentioned about bats being infected, and maybe they didn't cook it properly. Who's eating bats? I never heard of Africans eating bats, but who knows? And if they were eating bats, I'm sure they've been eating bats from the beginning of time. So, people's habits are don't really change, You have a culture of people, and a lot of these outbreaks are in the rural areas, so it's not in the urban centers, and people's, lifestyle it's pretty, it doesn't change much. But something changed in their societies. And that's what I'm getting at. Something changed. And I'm sure it's not the people that changed, but something that was introduced into these populations. Okay? And as we see that England and Russia, both of these nations have samples of these viruses. I'm wondering whether or not these nations may have placed these viruses in strategic locations that will affect the populations of these nations that do have the epidemic. And again, this is really concerning me, I'm concerned about Africa in general, and how people now in Africa, at least in Nigeria, is being told, I'm sorry, the doors are closed to you. You can't come to the U.S. for school. It's like we don't win. Black people don't win. So it'd be telling again if Europe closes its doors on Americans. And, we'll see what happens. This is a very political virus, condition. And we'll find out. And so let me know what you think. And give me a thumbs up. Tell your friends. regarding this Ebola crisis, and stay vigilant. So take care. Bye-bye.